The first TV programme to mock the marriage of love or convenience between Dave and Nick, we do, however, lay claim to be the only show with an iconic political partnership of its own between two gorgeous, but, well, ideologically opposed politicians. I give you Itchy and Scratchy. They've shown that tax and spend needn't be a barrier to intimacy and affection, or even affectation. I sort of feel that you were the coalition before we even had one. Once again, this week is on the cutting edge. But number 10 doesn't have our comfy little sofa. It doesn't have me. And we know a few of the decisions they'll be making will be even tougher than a grilling on this show. So can the Cameron-Clegg alliance last the distance? We put partnership in the spotlight. Hand in hand, the couple crossed the threshold and emerged again for the wedding speech. So this is what the new politics looks like. But have the old snipes really been forgotten?
Prime Minister, do you now regret when once asked what your favourite joke was, you replied, Nick Clegg?
We're all going to have. I'm afraid I did once.
Right.
We're all... Come back!
What makes for a solid partnership? The most infamous in modern politics had its ups and many downs, and the Blair-Brown legacy was finally put to bed this week. Blair having made some infamous new partnerships of his own. Many duos have shown that the on-camera chemistry isn't necessarily replicated off-screen. While other TV couples have proved that differences can bring a relationship alive. So, what's the secret of a perfect partnership? And can the Cameron-Clegg love-in last? And we're joined now by Alain de Botton. Welcome to This Week.
Thank you.
What makes for a successful partnership?
I think a really good partnership is when both people realise why they need each other, when there isn't a feeling on part of one person or another that there's something else, somewhere else, that's better. So mutual dependency is absolutely key, I think.
Does it help if both are similar, or does that cause problems if they're too similar?
I don't think you can get to too similar. I think it's just an alignment of interests. I think one can afford to be reasonably cynical. The reason why Gordon Brown and Tony Blair fell out is because Gordon Brown kept thinking that he would be better off on his own. And I don't think that in this political pair there is that feeling. I think both of them know they are tied together to a mast and both would sink. So that's a very strong predictor.
In a successful partnership, is there ever a real equality? Is there always a clear delineation between a strong one, and if not a weak one, a weaker one than the strong one?
I think there is always a strong one and a weaker one. The key point is, does the weaker one accept that they are the weaker one?
Well, that was Mr. Brown's problem.
And there's potential for problems. If you study the body language of Nick Clegg, there's a potential. I think he seems to me like someone who's proud and, at worst, perhaps a little bit fragile. And might he be upset? Might there be a fear that he's being patronised? I would watch that situation.
Mr. Cameron will have to watch that, won't he?
Absolutely. And Cameron...
And not overstage him, outstage him.
Because he has a patrician confidence, which could also be read as patronising. So I think they've got to watch that.
What do you make of the Nick Clegg-Dave Cameron partnership?
Well, I think mutual dependency is absolutely right, and that's why I think it will go the 5 years, because the mutual interest in surviving and doing this thing together and bringing it to fruition and delivering a result, you know, all of that is very, very evident. I would add mutual respect, and I think the election campaign here is very important. It's probably true that at one time David Cameron thought Nick Clegg was a joke, but at the end of the campaign he did not think he was a joke. In fact, he thought that, if anything, he had outperformed him in those debates. Particularly, he had achieved an easy-going manner, a charismatic manner. So, actually, David Cameron will see Nick Clegg as having more political gifts than perhaps anybody else in the cabinet. I mean, more than, say... I mean, George Osborne has terrific gifts behind the scenes, but he's not the charismatic figure that either one of these two is. So I think mutual respect is very, very important. And then there's another interesting thing about their relationship, which is that all the Conservatives in the cabinet are in some sense David Cameron's rivals because, you know, potentially they might want to take over. Nick Clegg, oddly enough, isn't a rival in the same sense. And so he can have a very special relationship with this man, knowing that he's not trying to become the leader of the Conservative Party.
Which means for Mr. Cameron that neither George Osborne nor Nick Clegg filled the Brown position, which caused Mr Blair so much problem.
No, they don't. And I think one thing which helps the Clegg-Cameron thing is they're so very similar in all sorts of ways, class, education, the type of wives they've chosen and so on. I think they're mutually independent at this point. I think they're very similar. But my view is in the long run, the Tory party as a party is going to eat the Lib Dems alive, particularly on the economic issues, because most of those Lib Dems in the cabinet have non-jobs.
What would trigger, I think you hit on one, for Mr Clegg to feel he's patronised by the old Etonian Mr Cameron. What else could cause a trigger, dissent, division?
One thing that could happen is that one of them becomes much more popular than the other. And so then they feel that they can live without the other one.
That's Mr Blair and Mr Brown again.
Yeah. So, for example, there is a scenario in which, strangely, Mr Clegg becomes very, very popular. And there's a feeling that he could become Prime Minister, why Cameron such, or vice versa. Or that one of them is seen as a serious liability. So long as their reputations are more or less equal, that's fine. But if one is seen as someone who always drops the ball, then there could be trouble.
But popularity can doom your career. Some of us realised that Mo Mowlam was on the skids when she got a round of applause in the middle of a Tony Blair speech, something that wasn't supposed to happen.
That's what I mean. Cameron could start getting quite jealous.
Yeah.
Cameron could start getting jealous of Clegg, because it's possible that Cameron will be blamed for everything that's wrong, and Clegg will keep sort of shining, and that could be dangerous.
They've got lots of problems. They'll have lots of problems with their own parties. They'll have events to deal with that they haven't foreseen.